All right, so I'm excited for today's topic. We'll talk about kettlebells, and I have Will here with me, who is way more knowledgeable about kettlebells than I am. So I'm excited to learn some more things about how to incorporate kettlebell into your training. So to get started off, why don't we, Will, why don't you introduce yourself and give a quick overview of your background and your expertise?
Great. Thanks. Hi, Will. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Of
I'm really
course.
excited to be here. I love everything about kettlebells, and I love talking about them. I could do it for days.
Yeah, perfect.
Um, so I'm located here in Southern California in the San Fernando Valley, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. We're in Chatsworth, California. My wife and I own the gym, Built Strong Strength Club. I've been in the industry for 13 years now. I really specialize in kettlebells and barbell training. I have trained local athletes here at the local high school who, we win city and national championships at
Mhm.
the school I used to work at. I've incorporated a lot of that stuff into their programming, but usually mostly with my clients, or especially here at the gym, we do a lot of barbell lifts and a
Mhm.
lot of kettlebells. And with my clients, I do a lot of kettlebells. I'm a big advocate and believer in them and everything that they can provide. So I've been doing that for the last, really incorporating kettlebells into everything the last 5 or 6 years.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about today is kettlebells and why you'd use kettlebells, how to incorporate them into your training. And I see the background of your logo there in your gym, and clearly barbells are the focus, which is great. So why don't we just dive right in and talk about
Perfect.
kettlebells? So every gym, usually every big box gym has kettlebells, right? So they're pretty easy to come by. They're very easy to even have at your home if you want to do like build an at-home gym. So let's talk about why you would even want to consider using kettlebells as part of your training. So why would someone want to use kettlebells as part of their training? What's the purpose, the advantages of using kettlebells?
So I can replace an entire gym with just a couple kettlebells. I
Hmm.
can replace your barbells, your dumbbells. So if space is an issue, there's something
Right,
really to consider.
right,
Not a lot of people can have a full facility, or they don't want to blow out their garage
right,
and just build out a garage. So
right,
if space is an issue, we can certainly. If I have 6 feet and a couple kettlebells, we can get a lot done.
right.
But it's really kind of a bang for your buck type thing, because I can do conditioning and strength all kind of in a couple
Hmm.
moves to kind of build overall fitness. If you're not a big runner but you want to kind of get that cardio burn, I can
Right.
get your heart rate. I can spike your heart rate pretty quickly with some swings and some kettlebell movements. So it's the economics of it really is kind of beneficial. A lot of posterior training,
Hmm.
a lot of backside training. Generally, just because we're bipedal in the way we move, we're really kind of quad dominant. So you can start getting some more glute training in there, which can help with some lower back pain and get some more hamstring work. And especially for athletes, it gets that really conditioning and that explosive work,
Yeah.
right? That hip drive that we're looking for in a lot of athletic movements.
Yeah, and I think that first point is a really good consideration is space, right? Because kettlebells are pretty compact compared to a full-on rack and multiple plates and a barbell. With the kettlebell, it takes a very little space, cheaper. Anyone could have them at home, and of course, a lot of gyms have them. So, if space is a consideration, kettlebells are far better bang for your buck, like you said, than getting a full-on rack and barbells and plates when you could just use kettlebells as part of your workout.
Yeah, and that's really kind of why I fell in love with just the economics of it. I mean, a
Right,
good
right.
kettlebell, you're going to pay some money for a good kettlebell, like you would
Right,
with a good
right,
barbell or anything like that.
right.
But they last forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they just last. I mean, a good kettlebell will last you forever.
Right.
You know, there's different systems. I come from the Russian style training system, and listen, if you're going through a Russian winter, these
Yeah,
things last. Like
yeah,
you can put some damage into them, and they're
right.
still good. So that's the nice thing about them.
And then, so let's talk about how you actually incorporate kettlebell training or kettlebells into your training, the type of movement. So you did mention you can do conditioning, you could also do explosive movements and sort of weight training. So why don't you talk about some sort of types of movements you can incorporate into your workouts just using kettlebells?
Right. So really, you kind of have to look at why you're using them, what the emphasis you're using them for. Do you want them to enhance something you're trying to do? You want them to be the main focus of your training program? So you kind of have to just kind of start eliminating some things like, why do I want to use this? And that makes it really easier for exercise selection.
Right.
It just helps out with everything. So if you want to stay with the basics of it, really kind of the basic stuff of it. If you just did Turkish get-ups and kettlebell swings, you're covering a lot of bases.
Yeah.
Turkish get-ups, if you've seen a Turkish get-ups, that's essentially when a guy's or gals lying on the floor and they're doing all these weird movements to get themselves up in the air, right?
Yeah.
But it promotes shoulder stability, hip mobility, hip stability, core stability, and through a dynamic range of motion.
Right.
Which is what a lot of athletics are, is a dynamic range of motion. We just don't move singularly. We're all over the place. So that's the nice thing about it. And then with the swings, it's a lot of hip drive. So it gets you that explosive movement through your hips, which once again helps with a lot of plyometrics, a lot of jumping, a lot of running, all that other stuff.
Right.
So you got to figure out what you're trying to do with them. So the basics would be that Turkish get up in the swings. And if you start incorporating that stuff into your programs, it's going to help with your bench. It's going to help with your squats. It's going to help you with your deadlift. It's going to help you with the explosiveness off the line. It's going to kind of help with all that stuff. And like I said, it's going to get your heart rate going, so you don't have to do that. Here's my 30-minute slow burn cardio, and here we go.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing about them is a lot of athletics. Even if you're not an athlete, but a lot of athletics are that quick burst of speed.
Right.
Look at football, for example. I mean, how long's a football play?
Seconds.
Exactly. Sometimes it breaks out, and you have to go longer. But maybe being generous, 15 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So we can mimic those athletic movements. We can do 15 seconds worth of swings, and then take a 45-second break, which is roughly around in between each play. So now we can start incorporating that athleticism into our training, which will translate out into the field or to anywhere you want to go.
Right.
If you're a runner, it helps with that explosiveness, even a distance runner for that that backside training.
Right.
So you got to figure out why we want to use these things. So the basics would be that Turkish get up and that swing. And we can start, if you get those down, we can start putting stuff on top of that. We can do that shoulder press, that strict shoulder press.
Right.
There's different versions of the shoulder press, jerks and push presses and all that stuff. But for that great overhead strength, we can do that strict shoulder press. We can do kettlebell cleans, which is an incorporating of a swing and some other movements in a kind of a pulling motion. So now we get that lat strength. We get that rhomboid strength. So we got to figure out what we want to do in our training with it, and then where can we put it to help enhance on what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Kettlebells, just from what you just briefly talked about, is very diverse, right? So kettlebells can be used for a wide variety of training in terms of programming. But what you said is dead on. What I think a lot of people make the mistake of is they just kind of jump right in without any sort of idea of what they're trying to do. But with kettlebells or any sort of training, right, you want to have some sort of goal. And then based on that goal is what you program your training on. And so same thing with kettlebells, right? So depending the foundational movements, it sounds like, are the Turkish get-ups and the kettlebell swings. And then depending on what your goal is, that's when you start layering other movements on top of that, right? Depending on if you want to focus on explosive movements or hypertrophy or strength or just general fitness, right?
Right. It's, plan the work the plan.
Right.
That randomness coming in, and there's some merit to a little bit of randomness.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you're just going to walk and be like, I don't know what I'm doing today, I guess I'll do some push-ups and a pull-up and some swing. You just kind of get lost out there.
Right.
So you want to plan the work and then work the plan. So if it's your auxiliary movement for what you're trying to do, it makes it a little bit easier because you can start now putting it on certain days on where you want to put things. If it's going to be your main focus, like all you're going to do is kettlebells, it gets a little bit trickier because you want to start pairing similar exercises or exercises together. So that way you're not smoking yourself out every day.
Right.
Like anything, like you just don't do bench press every day.
Right. Yeah.
You could.
You should. Yeah, you should, but you shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, but you shouldn't. You got to space those things out.
Right.
So if you're using it as your auxiliary movement, for example, if I'm doing a deadlift day,
Yeah,
I'll
maybe you
start.
could explain what that means when
Absolutely.
you say auxiliary movement,
Absolutely.
just yeah, so we're all everyone's on the same page.
Absolutely. So let's go with, just to keep things simple, let's stay with the bench, deadlift, and
Mhm.
squat, right? So we'll deadlift on Monday, bench on Wednesday, squat on Friday,
Yep.
right? Basic program. So if I was going to do a heavy deadlift day, doesn't matter the type of
Mhm.
deadlift, Romanian,
Yeah, yeah,
sumo, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
I would probably throw some swings in behind that
Okay.
because it is a
Right.
similar motion because of that hip drive,
Mhm.
right? So I throw some swings in the back end of it, of my training program. So if I was going to do some deadlifts and then maybe some pulls to strengthen my back a little bit,
Mhm.
I would throw that on the back end of my programming for the last 10, 15 minutes of my session as my conditioning, so I can get a little heart rate, because I'm
Mhm.
not a big
Right.
fan of running because I just don't like to run.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But I'm also using kind of the same muscles that I was using out for that day.
Right, right.
Right. So I would throw that in there kind of on the back end of it, as an auxiliary lift. On the bench day, you would either open up or close out with Turkish get ups.
Mhm.
Right. So, because it's the way the movement of the Turkish get up is, you're promoting that shoulder stability, and that spine stability, and we're just kind of warming everything up. And just in general, on a side note, I think Turkish get ups are a perfect warm up before any session.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can use those also as a warm-up activity for really any training session,
Absolutely. I mean,
moving
because
your whole entire body.
yes, barring any like basic mobility work that you have to
Right,
address.
right.
But if you're pretty much kind of good to go, which most everybody is, you can
Mhm.
do a couple Turkish get ups, do, three by ones, one on each side, 3 sets.
Yeah, okay,
Take
yep,
10 minutes to do
yep,
that. And you're, oof, let's go.
yeah. Probably get a
Let's
little
go.
sweat on, yeah.
Yeah, so I would program that like on an upper body day, just to kind of get my shoulders warmed up. And on a Friday, if we were doing a squat, uh, once again, start with your basic squat anywhere you want to go. And
Mhm.
then I can back end it with some goblet squats. So if I'm doing some
Yep,
back squats, because that heavy load on the spine, then I
yep.
would front load, just so I can just not like smoke myself out again,
Right, right, yeah,
and
yeah.
can give my back a little bit of a break. Or, rack squats, or even you can come back with some swings again.
Mhm.
If you wanted to come back on that and do a similar thing, you can go heavy swings. You can go light swings on your deadlift day,
Mhm.
just because you're deadlifting, and then you can go heavy swings on your squat day.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So we
Yep,
can kind of get that stuff in there. So if you want to stay in that basic world, you can do that stuff. You can throw some presses in, overhead presses on
yep.
your
Bench.
yeah, on your bench day if you wanted to do it there. You could throw some cleans, some double kettlebell cleans,
Mhm.
single kettlebell cleans. You could do it on your deadlift or your squat day, because once again we have that hip drive, we
Right.
have that posterior training, and you need a strong back to deadlift.
Yeah.
You need a strong back to bench. You need a strong back to squat.
Mhm.
So it incorporates itself nicely into there.
Right.
So, or if you wanted to go like a push pull day, you can throw
Mhm.
cleans and some of that stuff
Yep.
on a push pull day, depending on what your programming is. I'm a big believer in deadlift, bench, and squat. So
Yeah.
I base everything around those three lifts, and then on the back end, that's when I start using it as my kettlebells as a conditioning and auxiliary stuff to kind of address any weakness in the system that I might have.
Right, yeah, so you have your core foundational lifts, right? The bench, squat, and deadlift, and then those auxiliary lifts with the kettlebells, you just make sure when you incorporate those into, bench, squat, deadlift, whatever day you're doing those 3 movements or 3 exercises, that the auxiliary movements with kettlebells are just, kinda enhancing what you're already focusing on for that day. So if you're doing deadlifts, then you're gonna do kettlebell movements that are aligned with that movement of the deadlift, right? Or bench or squat.
Yeah, I this is just my own personal theory, and so there's push pull, push pull rotate essentially.
Mhm.
Push pull, I mean, there's very 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 basic movements. I believe the deadlift hip hinge and the kettlebell swing hip hinge are virtually the same thing. There's
Mhm.
arguments, kind of my little kettlebell circle, that the swing is a completely separate movement from the deadlift, and I understand what they're saying by that, but I
Mhm.
try to pair those things together, because I don't want to deadlift heavy on a Monday and then start doing swings on a Tuesday and be like,
Yeah.
God, I'm just
Yeah.
smoked.
Yeah.
My glutes are killing me.
Yeah.
And so you want to maintain that power throughout the movement. So I try to pair those things so that way I get the bang for the buck with them, and that way I get the adequate rest in between
Mhm.
training session. So
Right.
that way I can get the most out of what I'm doing.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think too, if you're so let's talk about if you're a beginner and you're just starting out. We talked about, you're looking for performance or explosive movements. So, but if you're just a beginner looking for just general health, right? You just want to improve your health, maybe gain a little strength, do some cardio. Where would you start with kettlebells if with an absolute beginner that just walked into your gym? Where would you have them start?
My goal is to get everybody to swing.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
the kettlebell swing is the prime mover for everything. You
Okay.
start getting into the Turkish, and you have to practice a lot of these movements.
Hmm.
And that's the thing with the kettlebells that I think a lot of people get frustrated with is
Hmm.
that they just want to come in and do it. And I
Right.
understand
Right.
that theory. And you can kind of come in and do a bench,
Mhm.
and you can
Right.
kind of
Oh,
come
yeah,
in and do
yeah,
some curl. You know what I mean? You can
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
muscle your way through it. Even if you're doing it poorly,
yeah.
you can kind of muscle your way through a lot of exercises. And the
That's a
thing with
great
the
point. Yeah, that's a great
right?
point. Yeah.
So the thing with the kettlebells is you got to put some work into them, and you got to
Mhm.
put some focus into them, because they will give you immediate feedback if you're doing something wrong, and
Mm,
they'll chew
true.
you up. They'll flat
Mhm.
out chew you up. So, you're not getting your hips through, or this is not going over here. And all of a sudden you're like, well, why the hell am I getting, I'm just getting beat up.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I'm like, if you feel like you're doing something wrong, you're doing something wrong, put the bell down. Don't be a hero. Let's
Mhm.
figure out what's going on. So the first thing I try to do is get people to kettlebell swing. If they can kettlebell deadlift with correct form, I can get them to get into a world of a swing. I
Okay.
want a very competent swing. There's gurus out there who said, I've done one perfect kettlebell swing once in my life.
Oh, okay.
There's always something to improve with it. You
Yeah,
always go
yeah.
like, oh, that's a little bit better than.
Right.
So I want to get people to swing, because if you can understand where and how the bell moves and how your hips move in relation to it, I can get you to clean. Right, the
Right.
swing is
Right.
kind of the basic for a lot of these movements. I can get you to squat,
Right.
right? If you kind of understand like how to move things, I can get you to do a kettlebell snatch,
Mhm.
because these are all these hip drive movements that's really incorporated. So I really want to try to get people to swing, and when they have a competent swing, I like to say competent as opposed to perfect, because what's
Mhm.
perfect? When they have a competent swing where they can make adjustments like, oh, that was wrong, and then fix it really quick. They understand their power breathing. They understand how to
True.
swing.
Right. Right.
That is my goal, is to get somebody to swing. And then we start building on top of that,
Mhm.
because I can regress you in your cleans to do dead cleans and all this other stuff to understand how the bell moves, and then just incorporating that swing
Mhm.
is kind of natural to get it into there. So I want people to swing. If you're
Okay.
just bare bones, swing,
Yeah.
just swing.
Which is, it can be more complicated than a lot of people think, and I think it's a really good point of people can hop on a bench and start doing a bench press, right? Because they can figure it out, or they can generally do that pressing motion pretty easily, right? Maybe they're
Right,
not doing it completely correctly, but they can kind of figure it out, right? But
right.
kettlebells is it's a more technical movement, right?
Yeah, like in the Russian style, we call it practice. We don't work out; we practice. Because it takes some time. And I tell people, because we have kettlebell classes here, I said, if you're going to come in once every randomly, I
Mhm.
want you to. I'm not discouraging you not to come in once. You just come in when
Mhm.
you can come in,
Right.
but be prepared. It's going to take a second,
Mm. Yeah.
and sometimes you take a little bit of abuse, because you're going to take a little bit of abuse, depending on your ability to like outsource information into your
Mhm.
body and
Right.
getting your hips moving. If people have an idea how their hips move and how things work together, you can
Mhm.
get somebody to get a swing pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you got to put some work into it. But that's just like anything, though. If
Mhm.
you're just going to go out there and just try to deadlift and just randomly do it every once in a while, I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to do that with a squat, good luck.
Mhm.
You gotta put some work into it and understand where you're putting it and make the effort to make it better.
Right.
Because,
Right.
like I said earlier, like if you have a competent swing, you can do a lot of kettlebell movements.
Yep.
and not have
Yeah,
to
and I
do.
think it's a good kind of segue. So when it comes to common mistakes that people make using kettlebells that you see, what are some common mistakes that people make when they start using kettlebells?
Wow. How much time do you have? And this is just in my experience and what I've seen. Um, I see a lot of people. We'll stick with the swing.
Okay.
We'll stick with the swing because you get a lot of things all over the place.
Yeah.
We'll stick with the swing. You don't see a far enough backswing.
Mhm,
A lot of the times, you don't see a stand up tall at the top of the swing because you
mhm,
want to stand up tall so they don't get their hips all the way through. They'll pull their hips out early on the descent on the swing. So that puts a lot of strain on the lower back. I am not a fan of certain gyms that do all the way up overhead double
mhm,
hand. That doesn't seem right to me. So I've seen a lot of different things. I tell people you're only as good as your start.
mhm.
So if your setup is poor, for lack of a better word, if we
Right.
don't have a good setup, that's everything. If you have a kind of a weak setup going in a deadlift, you just play the rest of the time
Yeah.
just trying to catch up. So, we want to start correctly. And that's
Mhm,
literally walking up to the bell correctly,
mhm.
finding your distance correctly. So a lot of the common things, the real common thing is not getting your hips all the way through.
Okay.
People don't understand the standing up tall. And what I mean
Mhm.
by standing up tall is if you have a second, put your heels against the wall, put your glutes against the wall, put your shoulder blades and put your head against the wall. That is standing up tall,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's vertical. You'll see some hyperextension in the hips, but a lot of it is not getting the hips all the way through. And then some with the descending of the bell, they're
Mhm.
just kind of all over the place
Yeah.
because it's not a natural Western movement.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're right.
It's
Yeah.
just not a
Yeah. It's
natural.
kind of a funky movement to
It's a
learn.
weird move. It's a
Yeah.
weird movement. It's a weird movement because it's an arc as opposed to a deadlift is a pull straight up.
Right. Right.
A
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
stuff is sagittal, right? Vertical. It's up and down. Bench press is sagittal. Squat is
Yep.
sagittal.
Yeah.
Deadlift is
Yeah.
sagittal.
Yeah.
With the swing, it has that arc.
Mhm.
So the bell can get too far away. The bell doesn't go
Mhm.
back far enough. So yeah, the real common thing is not getting the hips all the way through.
Mhm.
But once you learn how to lock out those hips all the way through, let's go back to the deadlift. You want to stand up tall with the deadlift. You want to flex your glutes at the top. You want to stand vertical.
Mhm.
That's the swing. You want to stand up tall at the top. You want to flex your glutes. You want to flex your quads. You want to flex your
Yeah.
abs. You want to stand tall at the top.
Yep.
So that's the swing. And so that you don't see a lot of standing up tall and pulling the hips out early on the descent. Once again, that casts the bell. It does weird things. And once again, it gives you that immediate feedback. God, this is killing me. Why is this killing me? Because we're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
We're
Yep.
doing something wrong. Or wrong is not maybe the best word, but we can fix some things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? There's
Yeah.
always room for improvement.
Mhm.
So those are the kind of the common things that I see in the swing. And obviously other stuff that builds off of that. You see a lot of stuff with the snatch and the
Mhm.
clean and stuff, but those are a little more advanced movements.
What about people that do you see a lot of people using the incorrect weight when they first start, or using going too heavy or too light?
So there's a saying, heavy bells clean up technique.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the catch 22 because if you go too light, you can kind of lie, so to speak,
Mm,
quote unquote,
yeah.
kind of do the things correctly. But with a heavy bell, you really have to focus on driving your hips and standing up tall and flexing
Right.
all that stuff, or the bell
Right.
just kind of gets away from you.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you go too heavy and then it's just you're out of control.
Right. Right. Right.
So there is that kind of that happy medium. You need enough resistance
Mhm.
that you have to focus on what you're doing.
Mhm.
If it's so light and you're just doing swings and having a conversation about something,
Yeah.
probably need to make some adjustments in there. So it's finding that happy medium. If you have a 12 kilo, kettlebells are in kilos,
Mhm.
a 12 kilos, which is about 25 pounds, 26 pounds, a 16 kilo, which is 35, and a 20 kilo, which is 45. If you have kind of those three, or at least a 24 kilo, a 12 to a
Mhm.
24 kilo, you can get a lot done.
Mhm.
You can, a lot of people can kind of stay in that world. You can 12 to 16 kilo out in the beginning, and then we can build on top of that. You'd be amazed how quickly, if you get your hips correct, you get your drive correct, how quickly you can build up in weight.
Yeah.
Like kind of like everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good point. I think you got to find I guess that sweet spot, right? Where you don't want something too easy, but if it's too heavy, then incorrect. A lot of times I see people lifting too heavy with really poor form with any sort of movement or exercise, right? So you got to find that sweet spot where it's not too light, but you still want to be challenged, but you also want to do it correctly. I'm sure it takes a little bit of time for people to find that zone that works out well for them, and then kind of continually progress on top of that, right?
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those things that you kind of have to like play with and kind of figure it out. You want your power and your force. You want your force production to be the same regardless of the weight.
Yep.
Generally speaking, you want your force production. So if you're going up in weight and your swing's okay, but your force production's going down, it's too heavy. Vice versa. Now, obviously, you have to apply the correct amount of force to the weight you're using. I can still maintain my form on 6 kilos as I can with 32 kilos. Like the form still stays great, but I don't have to go wham, and go really, really hard with the 6 kilos because it just goes all over the place.
Yeah.
So you want to apply the correct amount of force, but it doesn't mean your technique's the same. If you're just crashing and burning, when you're crashing and burning.
Yeah.
If you're doing swings, if it's too heavy, you just get chewed up. Your form might be correct. You're like, God, I'm just dying here.
Yeah.
We're too heavy.
Yeah.
We're too heavy.
From the cardio perspective, what's a good amount of time that you have, your clients use kettlebells, like for like a minute of work or 2 minutes of work?
Yeah, it depends on where I'm going to place it. Sometimes I'll run it in a circuit.
Okay. Yeah. Incorporate kettlebell circuit training. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes if I do if we're doing some deadlifts, I'll throw a swing in a circuit. So I'll do like a swing and then some pull-ups and then something else. So I'll keep it around 10. I'll keep that point around 10. If we're going for a cardio thing, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. You can ladder 10 swings, take a breather, 9 swings, take a breather, go up the ladder, you go down the ladder. You can do a time swings, which is really, I'm a big fan of time stuff.
Yeah.
So you can go a 1-to-1 work rest ratio, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. You can go 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. You go a little heavier.
Yeah.
So you get that longer breather. 40-20. You can kind of do one-handed swings, two-handed swings, 2 bells. So you can kind of vary your resistance with that. If we're going for a pure conditioning point, especially if you're an athlete, if you want to go back to an athlete, we can go back to football. All right. Well, my pure conditioning point is my play's about 15 seconds. Or baseball player. I'm a baseball guy, right? So I have that sprint from, let's say, first to second, or from home to second. We hit a double. Right? Well, that takes about 10, 15 seconds.
Yep.
Roughly. So, okay, I'll swing for 15 seconds. And then I'll take a minute break.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'll swing for 15 seconds because now I'm mimicking my sport. So we can do like little things like that. That's what I kind of like to do with the conditioning aspect of it. Is if we're just really good at conditioning, especially with the kettlebell class, we'll do some stuff, and then the last 20 minutes is like, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's break a sweat and let's breathe hard and let's go.
Yeah. Great alternative if you don't want to do that slow steady state cardio is to do some kettlebell style workouts where you can do that kind of on and off quickly, and instead of doing 30 minutes of slow treadmill walking or running, and you get bored of that pretty quickly. You just do some kettlebell workouts to get your heart rate up, get moving, and instead of and probably stay more engaging as well than doing slow stage state cardio.
And we're building some strength and some explosive power.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, like what sport does that slow burn cardio? The fat burning zone.
Yeah.
Like what sport does that? I mean, I'll give you long distance runners.
Yeah, marathon. Yeah.
I'll give you that. I mean, I know there's sports out there, but even soccer is a sprint to a jog, sprint to a jog, sprint to a jog. So, but what sport is out there does that long, slow distance running? I mean, nothing. So
only that.
Yeah, really only long distance running. So you can mimic your sport with those swings and get that hip drive.
Hmm.
And you can vary the planes that you're using it
Yeah.
with, but you can mimic the sport and get your conditioning for your sport as opposed to running gassers.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, gassers are gassers. Sometimes you don't want to kill the sacred cow, but
Yeah.
if I had people never do a gasser again in a sports program, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Really be fine with that. So,
What's define maybe expand on gassers. I don't think a lot of people know what a gasser is.
oh, like the classic football, you sprint across there.
Yeah.
It's either depending on how the coach feels like we're going to sprint from sideline to sideline, or there and back, or end zone to end zone, or 5 yards, walk back 10 yards.
Hmm.
But I mean, just that basic conditioning that has been around since the dawn of man. Um, that's not a hill I'm gonna die on if I'm in a
Yeah.
sports program. I'm not gonna like call the coach out on that. There's certainly better ways to get your athlete in
Hmm.
shape. And sometimes, you got to push. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie, you got to push. You got to see what you're all about.
Mhm.
But for the everyday person, I don't want to put on my running shoes and do wind
Yeah.
sprints. I have no urge. I
Yeah.
just have no urge anymore.
Yeah.
So it gives me that conditioning aspect where I can get my heart rate into that 150, 160,
Hmm.
170, 180, where I can really get my heart rate going and give me that adequate rest time. So that way I can, once again, mimic my sport. So when I hit the field, when fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Yeah.
So when I get to that in the later minutes of any sport, all right, I've been here before.
Yeah.
I've been here before. I can do this. Let's go.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap things up, if someone is interested in starting to use kettlebells, where would you suggest they start? Like they're brand new, they want to use kettlebells. Where would they start?
So there's a couple of different accreditations. It depends on where you're going. If you want to do the hard style, Russian style, the one that I believe in or the one that I do, I would go to Strong First, all one
Okay.
word. That's kind of considered the gold standard. That's where I've gotten my schooling from. That's
Okay.
kind of considered the gold standard of the Russian style.
Mhm.
They are stringent, very stringent about how they do things, and they're really, really based on technique. There's also what's known as sport style, which is a different style of swing, like how they rock and how they set stuff up.
Okay.
There's IFKK. I'm not very familiar with the sport style since I do that hard style,
Mhm.
but you can go Strong First. They have a bunch of videos on YouTube. Strong First, their website.
Okay.
Certainly, you can come talk to me if you're interested in kettlebells. Built Strong Strength Club is our website. So you can get all our information there and we can talk, and I can kind of guide somebody a little more individually to
Yeah.
see what they have available to them.
Yeah. But but you earlier mentioned that a good two first exercise to start off with is the swings and the Turkish get up, right?
Absolutely. If you just did nothing else but swings and Turkish get ups, you did that and you did that well and you kept on increasing weight, you'll be an animal.
Yeah.
You'd just be a flat out animal. You'll be a lot to
Yeah.
handle.
Especially the swings too. The swings seems like a really good movement to incorporate because they'll benefit other exercises, and you can get a pretty good workout conditioning wise, and still build some strength and uh, any sort of functional movement you can do into your work. As some of that, I think we, especially in the bodybuilding community, we prioritize size and mass, but we don't really focus on functional movement as much as we probably should. So I think
Right.
there's aspects of that we can incorporate into other styles of training as well, especially the functional movements, which is as human beings we do a lot of functional movements in our daily lives.
Yeah, that's how the swing, in my experience, is probably one of the most transferable
Mhm.
moves throughout anything, throughout
Yeah.
any sport, throughout any conditioning,
Mhm.
throughout any weekend warrior. It's just flat out the most transferable.
Yeah.
So, if anything, if you can get some Turkish in, I recommend it just for stability and mobility. But if you just want to bare bones it, swings,
Mhm.
single hand swings, double swing, swings all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. There's so many different. I would say unlimited amount of different types of things you could do, but there's the variation is almost limitless, right? With a couple kettlebells, depending on the weights, the terms of movements you can do, and like you said in the beginning, they're very easy to store. They don't take up a lot of space. They're cheaper than having a full on home gym. So, and nearly every big box gym that I've seen has kettlebells somewhere. That are always available.
Collecting dust.
Yeah, yes, collecting dust. Yeah,
Collecting dust.
yeah. Not as many people use them, but I think part of that though is lack of knowledge, and then like you said, some of those movements do require a lot more like a cleaner technique than other. You know, doing barbell curls are pretty simple. You can do curls with a kettlebell too, but some of the
Yes.
other kettlebell movements I think are people maybe get scared of those little, not scared, but a little put off by the technique required for those some movements. But I think it's just why we're here, right? To talk about kettlebells and kettlebell training and try to demystify it a little bit.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you got to get coached up,
Yeah,
and you got to put some work into it.
yeah, yeah.
If you're going to use it casually, let's put some effort into something else if you're just
Right,
going to
right,
randomly do it.
right, right. So I think to wrap things up, we talked through why you'd use kettlebells, and then how to incorporate kettlebells in your workout. And we talked a lot more detail about type of kettlebell training and how to get started. Do you have any other last minute comments before we wrap things up?
Turkish get-ups and swings.
Triggers get swings. All right, those are that's the key takeaway. Is if you're looking to do you incorporate kettlebells, you don't know where to start. Triggers get up and swing, or if you
Turkish
already use
get-ups.
kettlebells, make sure you focus on your form and make sure you're doing kettlebell swings and Turkish get ups.
Technique,
Yeah,
and then build from there and be patient.
yeah,
Just be patient. It comes.
yeah. And I'll definitely put your contact information in the notes section so people can reach out to you. And I'll try to find that. You said it's strong. Is that
Strong first.
strong first? Okay.
Strong
Yeah,
first.
I'll
All
try to
one
put that
word.
as well in case anyone wants to go dig around and learn more about kettlebells and different types of movements they can do with kettlebells. But appreciate you having you on, and it was a really good topic of discussion. And I hope people could take away from this is that they can actually incorporate kettlebells in their workouts and not to be put off by them, and use them in any different types of training to be beneficial.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. I appreciate you.
Yep. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Bye. There it is.